and woke up on Miami Beach, not literally on the beach, but at a friend's house. And I said, I think it's just time to come home. I'm just going to go liquidate everything I got on Craigslist. They can take and repo whatever they're going to take anyway, and come back for a fresh start. And that's what I did. So March 2008, I arrived here with my daughter in a duffel bag.
All right, Sebastian Rusk. What's up, brother? How you doing, man?
Will, what's up, dude? It's been a minute.
It has been a minute. It's been a while. We first met, like you were talking about, the lab, right?
At the lab, you were doing an event, and I saw the name Live Ninja, and I was like, this guy's cool.
I think you were actually on the platform for a while.
I think I was, too.
Yeah, back in the day when we first started.
Went to, you had, you do Waffle Wednesday.
Yep, exactly.
I remember that.
Yeah. That was.
You were like, you guys were one of the first ones to be like, yeah, we got a place in Wynwood. You know what I mean?
So tell me what's been going on with you, man. You got a lot going on. You were doing a lot of social media stuff, and now I see you super active. So like right now, a big focus for you is podcasting.
100%.
Right? Yeah. So this is going to be a podcast about podcasts.
Yeah.
I love that.
Me too.
Right.
I leave my podcast studio that we just opened 2 days ago and go to another podcast studio, yours, here for a great conversation about podcasting. Yeah, we just talked about this before we started recording the show, and that was, it's great when those signs continue to show up and I'll talk about how the whole studio came about, but sometimes you have to jump off the cliff and just have faith that you're either going to learn how to fly or a parachute's going to just appear.
100%.
Right. And once that happens, you start to create momentum for where you're going. And then instead of having to chase people that need help with a podcast, you're simply attracting those people, and people are coming out of the woodwork. People from high school calling, people just random people see a T-shirt on an airplane, give me their card.
Yep.
So how it all is coming together, it's just coming to sit down with you here, see your awesome studio is just another reminder that I'm definitely on the right track. As far as I'm concerned, I could change my mind by Friday. But yeah, man, I've been building a brand for the past 10 years.
Yeah, I'd love to hear the whole story and how it came to now.
Sure. So I didn't go to college. I decided it would be a complete, utter waste of time. And I also had a kid when I was 21.
Oh, wow.
I didn't have it, but I'm the dad. So so I had a kid at 21, and I immediately woke up. Because when I heard about that, and most 21-year-olds would not do that, especially dudes. Dudes just kind of bail, especially early on. And I told myself, I got myself into this situation, and I don't really say it wasn't a negative one, but I'm in it, and I'm responsible. Whatever the other party decides to do is out of my control, but I know what I can control, and that is I can work my ass off and make sure this kid has everything that she'll ever need, and hopefully a little bit more, right? We always want a little bit more for our kids than we had. So took a job in Chicago the second that I found, like 2 months after I found out that my daughter was on the way, and moved to the suburbs of Chicago, went to work for a domain registrar called itsyourdomain.com. Okay. And they later sold to Two Cows about 5 years ago, which is now Hover.
The domain registrar is like a GoDaddy.
Yeah, exactly. Like exactly. Yeah. For like $1 bazillion. So I maybe should have stuck around, but I didn't. Chicago was too cold. So I made my way to the West Coast with another job offer that I had got, because I was prospecting a guy that had an infomercial selling an online business in a box. So essentially a website, e-commerce, drop shipping, etc. And I thought, well, this guy's registering domain names. I'm doing biz dev for this domain registrar. Yep. Just like GoDaddy. I want this guy's account. So I called him for 6 months straight. It's kind of comparable to that whole Wall Street scene that you saw. Kid calls me 65 days in a row, wants to be a player. You want a friend, buy a dog. We got a dog running around here. And so he never signed on to do business with me, because he always said that the domain name game, say that fast 3 times, was like tripping over toothpicks to pick up pennies. And I was 22 years old, and every year I started to evaluate, okay, how can I take myself to the next level? If I made 50 grand this year, how do I make 75 next year? And am I happy with what I'm doing? And am I really staying true to where I'm at? I'm not just a sales guy. I think there's a lot more here. Yep. So I called him 6 months later when I did that evaluation, and he called and said, he picked up the phone immediately and said, "You're ready." And I said, well, I'm ready for a conversation. Let's understand each other. I'm exploring opportunities. You're destitute for a Sebastian on your team, right? Mm-hmm. I understand. I wish I had 3 on my team. Mm-hmm. So let's have a conversation. So he goes, I tell you what, why don't you come out for the weekend and we'll have a conversation. I'll show you the place. You've never been to Southern California before. So just get out here and I'll put you up. I'm like, okay, we're going to go back to the original conversation of I'm just exploring opportunities. I'm not job hunting. So have your admin book my flight, put me up and we'll figure it out. So I did just that, went out, spent the weekend with him. The first night we were there, he made me wait like 10 hours at the local mall called South Coast Plaza in Costa Mesa, California. Great place, but I've never been to California before. I waited in a mall all day for this lunatic, and he finally shows up. He was coming back from Las Vegas with his family. So shares the vision, puts me to work the very next Monday. We played golf on Sunday, and I went in and he said, I want you to just turn the place on its side. I want you to sell everything that you possibly can, and if it works out, we'll move you out here. So I went in, had 3 record weeks, and was completely out of debt like 2 weeks in. And I thought, there was not a doubt in my mind, California was the next move. So went back to Chicago, bought 2 one-way tickets, a moving truck, and moved everything to California. So I went to work for him for a year, made my first $100,000. He guaranteed me I'd make my first $100,000. I made $103,000 that year. He gave me $5,000 bonus and sent me to the Caribbean on a vacation. I came back and I quit. People are like, you're nuts. You like run the place. When you're a top salesman, you can, as long as you're producing, you can do whatever you want. But I did some simple math, Will. I sold $750,000 that year, and I took home 103. And those numbers will never work for me ever again. So I quit and became an entrepreneur and started opening call centers and doing direct marketing for mortgage brokers and real estate professionals. And during the whole air quotes real estate boom right before the recession, and I found myself at the peak or at the beginning of the recession realizing that if anything goes south here, I don't have anybody to sell anything to, because banks aren't lending, brokers aren't going to get deals, people aren't going to buy homes, etc. And that's precisely what happened. So I found myself waking up every day in Newport Beach for $10,000 a month just to wake up every day, and $2,000 a month in income, because my income continued to deteriorate as the market deteriorated. So I came back for a wedding in March of 2008 to Miami, and woke up on Miami Beach, not literally on the beach, but at a friend's house. And I said, I think it's just time to come home. I'm just going to go liquidate everything I got on Craigslist. They can take and repo whatever they're going to take anyway, and come back for a fresh start. And that's what I did. So March 2008, I arrived here with my daughter in a duffel bag. Wow. No motivation, no brand, no money, no ambition, no nothing at all. I literally sat in my buddy's rental apartment and for 2 years and just like did nothing. And I realized that not working and doing nothing and not paying rent and having buddies bail you out is a miserable feeling. Yeah. And that I promised myself that I would never, ever, ever put myself in that situation again. But it's a process. And especially during a recession, I think everybody was in that, like, for sure, yeah. Everyone felt it, right? And it's tough to be able to dust yourself off. And 2010, I had an awakening moment. I woke up and I said, I need to go see Tony Robbins. I need to wake the giant within, because this is bullshit. This whole sitting around, this self-pity. I got to the top of the mountain. Now I'm at the bottom in the valley again. Wah, wah, wah. Woe is me. Exactly. Yep. Exactly. The man right there. Yep. So I called my friend who was working for Tony at the time in San Diego. And I said, I want to come see Tony. And she said, it's going to be in Long Beach in a couple months. Here's how much it is. You got to fly out here, etc. I'm like, all right, cool. I got it written down. I'll figure it out. Well, she calls me back a half hour later and she's like, I totally forgot to introduce you to my best friend. Yep. She travels with Tony. She's on his core team of like 6 people. Great introduction for you. So she makes an introduction, and we chat on the phone a couple times during that week. And I send her a video that I had shot from my home office about inbound marketing and leads. I was trying to like resuscitate what I'd previously done in California. And I shot the video on my laptop. It was terrible quality, but I sent it to her and she just was ecstatic about it. She's like, dude, your energy is outstanding. You need to do something with video. And I thought, well, that's interesting that she said that. So we later met for a drink that week. And so she really got in my grill and said, so what's next? And I'm like, I don't know. And she's like, that's just bullshit. Like it just is. Like, you're starting to believe your own line of bullshit that what you're doing right now, which is nothing, is A-okay, and it's not a complete disservice to the world. So that kind of shook me up, because I thought, wow, this is rhyme and reason, that this conversation's happening. And she goes, why don't you start a YouTube channel? A lot of buzz around social media, social buzz TV. And I'm like, hey, that kind of jives. So I sent that to a designer, a freelancer on like Fiverr on Monday, and it came back with what is now the Social Buzz and still the Social Buzz TV logo. So I'm like, I got a logo, I've got an idea, I'm going to educate people, and we're going to shoot videos and talk about Twitter and Facebook and help people better understand what they don't know that they don't know about social media. So I started to evangelize that all across Miami. No car, no money. Skateboard, bus pass.
Love that. That was Social Buzz, right?
Yes.
Cool.
So I started going to networking events, and I'd say, hey, Will, just let me in. I have a flip cam. I'll do a video recap. I'll give it to you for free. Yeah.
Flip cams?
Kodak ZI8. I think it was gangster.
Yeah.
And
they had some good video at the time, those flip cams, right?
1080 that thing shot, and it was like $199, if that, I think.
Yeah.
So I would go to these events, and I would continue to rinse and repeat that process because I would meet people, grab business cards, set up meetings, and eventually I started doing my own events. And then word got around, like in Coral Gables, I'd do one at Morton's, and then Fleming's would call, and then Seasons 52. And so I would continue to rinse and repeat the model of invite people to a networking event, sell a few sponsors for people to put their junk. Their what do you call it? Your pamphlets, your banner, that's the word I'm looking for, banner, up, and not charge attendees and talk the venue into providing one cocktail because nobody has one drink in Miami, and free appetizers. And as I continued to rinse and repeat that model, people would say, hey, I've met you in an event, I've been to your event, I sponsored your event. Maybe you can help me out with my social media, because I would do social media boot camps right after the networker. Like the next morning, come back at 9 a.m. in the room upstairs, and I'm going to spend 3 hours with you and tell you everything I know about Twitter for $35. And that was a conversion to be able to get people to say, hey, can you help me out with my social media? So I started the agency in 2011. And a year later, I got a book deal to tell this whole story that we're talking about right now. Wow. And that was called Social Media Sucks If You Don't Know What You're Doing. So I met a guy named Gary Vaynerchuk about 12 years ago, and he just become just a special person in my life, and really mentored me through the past 12 years. And I don't see him a lot now, but when I do see him, we're in another city in a green room because I'm emceeing the event and he's the keynote or whatever the case is. But I really follow Gary's blueprint of like, the time is now to cash in on your passion and build your brand. And he wrote that with Crush It, 10 years ago. So fast forward to 2020, working on my second book. Podcasts suck if you don't have one. Really niche down into the speaking space. I still do keynote talks on storytelling, but being an event MC for live events. So
love that.
I was telling you earlier, I'm a hype man for live conferences and seminars, which I feel the most alive when I'm on stage. And then when I'm not on stage, I guess the next best thing would be helping people extract their story by starting a podcast. So the podcast Launch Lab came about 2016. Went through another tough time. It's amazing. It's a roller coaster. This entrepreneur ride. You know,
for sure, man. Yeah, it's crazy.
You can definitely agree with that. But 2016, I met a girl on Tinder, and we went on a date, and we never stopped hanging out. And
a lot of good stories start with, I met a girl on Tinder.
100%. 100%. Well, she was in the middle of this personal development program called gratitude training. And I'm like, what do they teach you how to be grateful? And she's like, not even a little bit. Like, it's personal development, like Landmark, Tony Robbins. And so I'm already a personal development junkie. But at that point in time, I was too cool for school. And so I was like, well, right now I'm integrating everything I've learned over the past couple of years, but we're never not learning. But she stayed pretty consistent or persistent rather, on me joining. So I actually joined the course. Her and I didn't work out, but I ended up completing part 1 and part 2 of the course, which forever altered the course of my life forever. Because I'm here to tell you today that if you don't get things right internally,
for sure,
everything externally will be an ongoing just path of destruction. Because you don't love yourself, you can't love others. You don't love what you do. How are others going to be sold on what you do? So to be able to make that distinction and be able to adjust things. None of us are broken per se. We just have some fine tuning that needs to get done, some childhood bullshit to work through, and just get to a point where we can become 100% accountable for our own lives. And that's where I felt that I was able to do. I was able to turn that corner. She broke my heart. Well, maybe I broke my own heart, but whatever. Didn't work out with her. Eternally grateful because she was obviously there to date me for a few months. And get me into the doors of that training. So 2016 was insanity, almost closed Social Buzz, almost just threw it all in, hung up the bow tie. Maybe I need to go a different direction. Maybe I should just go sell cars or be a greeter at Walmart. We start questioning ourselves. And I had another awakening moment. And I'm like, this is bullshit, dude. We've come this far. We're like 7 years into the game. We've come this far. And this is what winning is made of, is being able to make the distinction that I'm at a point right now that I want to quit. But there's enough in me just like walking across the fire at Tony's event, right? There's enough in me to be able to figure this thing out. So I literally left, found out about a place called Biz Nest in Coral Gables that was a co-working space. And I went in and I said, listen, I'm a guy that has a podcast, creates content. I'm a storyteller. I do events. I'm a good guy to have here. I don't need an office. I just need one of the floating desks. Just I'll get in where I fit in. So they agreed to that, and I moved in and was there for about a year and a half. And through that process, I met a friend that had challenged me to start to create a solution to help people start a podcast. She's like, why don't you create a course? And I'm like, well, that's cute and everything, but I want to see action being taken. If somebody buys my $97 course, sure, they can say, hey, listen, I took the course and here's what the results were. But if I work with them, then it's more of a hands-on experience. So I want to create a done for you, done with you solution to help people go from idea to iTunes.
Love it.
So we were having the conversation downstairs right on Ponce while she was getting in her car, rolled the window down type conversation.
Yeah.
And she's like, why don't you do something about it? And I thought, wow, this is how great things begin, is by that challenge of, I thought it was 5:00, time to go home and, beer 30 and, and wind down for the day. And I didn't. I went back upstairs and grabbed 3 pieces of paper and I said, okay, let's back up to 2011 when you started your podcast for the first time, and let's document the entire process. And I did that whole, here's the first thing I did, here's the next thing I did, here's how I did to promote it, here's when I stopped it, started it, here's when I gave up. And so I started and restarted my show 3 times. So I tell the story of that, and I said this is going to be called the Podcast Launch Lab. It's going to be a turnkey solution for marketers and entrepreneurs to create their story. Well, the story's already there, but create the framework to be able to tell their story in a valuable platform, which is podcasting. Being able to sit down and exchange information, have conversations with other people that are cooler than you, smarter than you, people that you want to meet, sponsors that you want to take a look at the show. I mean, every gamut possible of helping people, the reason behind wanting to start a podcast. So
I love it, man.
I said, that's it. We're off to the races. I got a logo made, started running around town and telling people about it. And I spent about 2 years in what I call a 2-year beta of figuring out who our ideal client is. And I didn't know that it was marketers and entrepreneurs in the beginning. In the beginning, I said it is anybody who wants to start a podcast, which is a jackass move. That's like anybody who has a budget.
It's too niche.
Right, exactly. So I launched the YouTube channel last year.
Nice.
And that's a whole different animal in and of itself, because YouTube is a science. I was taught by a very popular YouTuber now that's a dating coach. And I'm like, well, you're helping guys figure women out, which will be a lifetime effort, and you're going to be employed forever. I want to do the same thing for podcasting. So, Podcast Launch Lab's been around since 2016. And then I got tipped off to go. I went to an event at what was the previous Biz Nest, same location, late last year. And I went and met with the management, and I said, hey, I want to get a space. I want to open a podcast studio. And all I did was just say it. I didn't really have any game plan. And she took me to like the first place I saw. And she goes, this is a psychologist's office right now, but she's out of here January 1st. So I said, I'll take it.
Love it.
And I thought the deal fell through in December, and it was just my email went to spam. The deal was back on the table. As I'm cleaning and purging my home office and studio, she calls and was like, oh my God, I didn't get your email. It went to spam. Deal came together. I just I pushed all my chips in, bought all the equipment, and decorated it. The idea and vision was in my head. I just had to get it out of my head and onto like a reality, and we opened on Wednesday.
I love it, man.
So here we are.
Congrats, man.
Yeah, thanks.
That's awesome.
Dude. Yeah. The Podcast Launch Lab has been around, like I said, from the end of 2016, where I conceptualized
right, but the new studio.
Right. We took a unplanned 2-year beta, and then I just woke up one day in December of 2019, and I'm like, we're just going to open a podcast studio. That's the natural next step, because the Podcast Launch Lab, it needs to become a place to go to.
Yeah.
Even if you never start a podcast, you come to a meeting there, you feel the vibe of what's going on, and I stay top of mind of people that want to start a podcast.
For sure. So podcasts are huge these days. It's like the latest trend. Why are they so popular?
Because I think it's the natural next step for celebrities, people of influence that already have an existing platform. That's why you see so many popular podcasts starting from people that are already popular. Dr. Phil starting a podcast.
Right, it makes sense.
It's his natural next step. And he also has a cool name, which is Phil in the Blank.
That's cool.
And it's so non-Dr. Phil. It's just a conversation with really cool people for like an hour and a half of just riffing, and that's what everybody wants, a peek behind the curtain for people that we look up to and watch and see. Social media allows for for that to happen. Podcasting gives an even more of an in-depth look because it allows people to consume information from that specific individual or from you in a different platform than an Instagram story or a post or a picture or what have you. Again, the number one reason anyone should be starting a podcast is because they want to be able to put out as much value as possible into the world by telling their story, by having conversations that create that value. If you're starting a podcast to make $1 million and to monetize right out of the gates, more power to you. But I don't think that the focus it should necessarily be on monetizing the show.
Right.
You've got micro and macro when you're focusing on anything with a business venture or a marketing venture. But when first starting a podcast, if you can wrap yourself around your why enough and it's strong enough to go, I'm doing, like, for instance, I literally just signed up 2 of the 100 shows. We may do more than 100, but 2, that's the goal this year, of the 100 shows we're doing. And the guy's name is Ozzy Martinez, and he's a disabled vet in Marine, and knows a few mutual friends that I went to high school with and used to hang out with back in the day. So we're around the same age, and he is just on fire to share his message of surviving what he had to survive regarding coming back to real life, the reality of PTSD, and then tactical things that he actually did to rebuild his life back, to get his wife back, to not kill himself, to be able to do. So his why is so big that this guy is, I'd be negligent to not take a guy like this on to be able to go do it. So a guy like Ozzy figured out his why. Yours may not be PTSD. It may be another value add on, whatever it is, but it's not. I want to challenge people that are thinking about starting a podcast on behalf of their brand to talk about what you do every day.
Yeah.
Chances are what you do is probably pretty boring.
Yeah, definitely. You need to have some kind of angle and something you're really passionate about, right? Don't just start a podcast just to say I have a podcast, right? It makes no sense. It's like,
why do you have a podcast? Well, when you tell people why you have a podcast, it's far more impactful, I believe.
For sure.
When you start enrolling people into your why, people say, why do you want to help 100 people start a podcast in 2020? Because I know for a fact that being able to take someone from, well, I kind of sort of have an idea, to absolutely on fire for themselves, and that they figured out what the passion, where they figured out where the passion button was, and they pressed it, and they're on fire now, and they're ready to go tell their story. Before, again, going back to the personal development side of things, getting right internally so our external world can function. Same basic thing. If you're scared to be on camera, if you're afraid that Sally Pants 42 at AOL is going to call you an idiot, if you're concerned about all these outside influences, well, chances are that's unresolved in another area.
Right.
Not being able. So and the reason I bring that up, Will, is because I spend most of my time, you know how you do like media coaching and teach people how to like talk to the press and et cetera. I do that with podcasters and with speakers and with and people in front of a video camera. People's number 2 fear, dying. Number 1 fear, public speaking. Riddle me that one.
Crazy.
And I'll never forget it. I dated a girl 6 years ago that was petrified of public speaking, and she had started her own brand, was an entrepreneur. And she said, well, when I was a little girl, I did public theater, and I came out one time and came out on stage by myself, and I forgot my lines, and I said, and everybody started laughing. And I go, and then you created a story and carried that story for the rest of your time and started to believe that story. Right. And now that story has led you where? Nowhere. That story has prevented you from being on stage. So she was about to give a talk for a chamber in a few days or so. And I said, I just need you to understand one thing. And this is where the switch just flipped for her. How you feel about what you're saying or how you're going to be perceived is none of your business. The only thing that is your business and is within your control is to make sure that you know your stuff, that you present clearly, effectively, that you differentiate, that you motivate, that you separate yourself from what you do, and sell yourself while talking about what you go and do. And remember that every single person that's going to be in that room in a couple days is there to hear what you have to say. And for you to sit here engulfed in your bullshit story that I'm going to say something stupid or be perceived as something stupid is grossly negligent, and it makes you a taker.
Right.
So get in there and crush it. And 2 days later, she went in there, did everything I told her to do, and it literally switched. So I thought, why did that happen 6 years ago for a girl that I was dating? Because it's my everyday practice now, because not everybody's willing to just put on a mic, flip the camera on, grab a mic, and go nuts. I live for this shit.
Right.
Most people are like, ooh, a microphone.
Yeah, for sure. No, I've had people come into the studio that are some of the most charismatic people that I know, and as soon as the red light goes on, they're different people, completely freeze up.
I love my voice.
For sure. It's something also, look, I mean, I'm working through it and getting better as an interviewer each and every episode that I do. One of the reasons that I started this podcast is to challenge myself to do something that I'm not necessarily comfortable with, or that, is something that doesn't come naturally to me. I had to get good at public speaking because of the nature of running my company.
Right.
Had to pitch it a lot on stage.
Yeah,
so
you did.
It was like it forced me into that, and all of a sudden I got good at being on stage and more comfortable with it.
You're
but
like,
it was,
I like this shit.
yeah. It took that that big weighty thing to force me to do it, to get out of my comfort zone. And sometimes you need to do that to yourself.
100%.
Sometimes you need to put yourself in an uncomfortable position to grow.
Get uncomfortable daily.
Exactly. So that's kind of what, one of the reasons I'm doing this show, not only to sit down and talk with amazing people like you and learn from people like you, but also to do things that I'm not comfortable with, put myself out there on social media and get in front of a camera and a microphone and that kind of stuff.
And the thing is, you don't have to do any of these things.
No,
you know what I mean? You've had a great run. You're still busy. You got the family program. You're like, don't have to do a podcast, but you understand the value in it and where it's going, and understand that, hey, this is something that I made. The most recent quote that I've seen lately that I continue to repeat is, be brave enough to suck at something new.
Yeah, definitely.
And
for sure, man.
When I first read that, I didn't agree with that, but the more I think about that, as I'm opening a podcast studio and I'm hanging wallpaper and putting sound foam up, and people are calling and random things are happening and saying, I need a pot, and like, what?
Yep.
So yeah, crazy.
I love it, man. I love it. So why should someone start a podcast? Again, don't start a podcast just to start a podcast, but really there has to be something passionate about. There's a topic that you really, really love. Like, if someone who's listening be like, yeah, I want to start a podcast, but I don't know what I would talk about. Do you stop them right there and just say, don't force it? Think about naturally what you would love to share with the world. Is that how you
we can brainstorm a little bit, because I feel like I have a gift to be able to extract stuff out of people.
If a prospect came to you and you'd be like, you identified them as somebody that you want to start a podcast just because you want to start a podcast, would you turn business away, or would you do a deep dive to find out what they could offer the world?
I would just ask them a quick question on, I've just said, why do you want to start a podcast?
Right.
And if you can properly, I don't want to say properly, maybe that is the right word, explain to me your why, then we're on to something, because then we can build from there. If it's why just because I like podcasts, just because, well, listen, why don't you go back to the drawing board and ask yourself this question again? Why do I want to start a podcast?
Love it. Yep.
And when something shows up that gives you that warm and fuzzy feeling of like, oh, well, maybe I could talk about this. Oh, that's a little uncomfortable. Oh, yeah, it's a little, I don't know if I could ever talk about, when you come up with one of those, then you're starting to get closer to your why, and that probably is your why. And then you just need to have a conversation with yourself. Am I willing to get out of my own way long enough to create, to suck at something new that I know eventually, as with anything, we all sucked at walking when we first started to do it. We all fell off of our bike as soon as we took the training wheels off, right?
Yep.
So I think that there's, there's room for growth with anybody that wants to start a podcast, as long as the why really.
Start with why.
Once you got the why figured out.
Simon Sinek.
Right.
Start with why, right?
Exactly. That's one of my favorite
100%.
quotes ever. That guy is brilliant, is that, people don't care what you do. They care why you do it.
Absolutely.
Right. So there we go. Boom. Back to the whole, I don't care that you've got a podcast. Why do you have a podcast? Why have a pod? So for instance, the two out of the 100 shows we're starting right now as we speak have been from two people that have real big whys. I told you about Ozzy a minute ago. Great story of being a disabled vet. The other one comes from a stay-at-home mom of three that does triathlons.
Wow.
That was referred to me through an acquaintance at the gym who's a trainer. Like that's how small, but I wear these podcasts suck if you don't have one.
Sure.
Shirts every single day at the gym because it's free advertising. Exactly. Sure. So her why was, Sebastian, I in a million years would never have dreamt of doing a triathlon. I am hooked like a crackhead now, and I can't stop. And I want more. And it's not just more triathlons. I want more of what the entire process provides for my life, which is community and being challenged and learning new things. And like, what do you mean, like the right bike rack and adjustments and the training and the team and the camaraderie? So she said, now that this is my life and I love it, I want to be able to tell other people's stories that have been able to go through the same process of, I would never go on a triathlon. The only time I'm running is if a bear is chasing me, right? Yep. To, I absolutely love being a triathlete because it allows me to do X, Y, and Z. So her Instagram is Moms Who Try, and her podcast is Why Did You Try? TRI, a play on words. Yep. And she's going to, the first interview is going to be her coach and his wife, and then she's going to record post-training. On some Sunday mornings, we got her set up with a couple lapel mics. I'm like, you can literally sit on the bumper of your car and just have a conversation. And so her why was real big. Why? Because she wanted to extract other people's why on how they got to where she's at, which is, I don't want to do triathlons. I love triathlons. So
I love that.
I hope that illustrates like what we're looking for as far as why is concerned, or not just what you should be looking for when you're exploring that $1 million question of, should I start a podcast? If you're going to start one, start it now though, because there's only 800,000 shows. Yep. And that sounds like a big number.
No, it's actually not, relatively speaking.
Not even a little bit. And the technology's 17 years old. You know, remember, podcasting started and the name was derived from
iPod.
Exactly. Yep. Formerly known as the iPod, RIP iPod, which was going to be a cast that was going to be played on a pod, i.e. iPod. And then all these distribution platforms started to arise, and then, you know, Google and Google Play and everything else started to follow suit. Now you got every streaming service on the planet, mainly Spotify, playing Pac-Man with every single podcasting solution out there, from Gimlet to Anchor to $1 million acquisition. So that's when I really started to get that we needed to speed the process up of being able to grow this whole podcast launch lab thing. And I think the next move was the studio and to help 100 people. And then we've got something to work with. You know, Gimlet got bought because they had a phenomenal model of an existing that put Spotify to the front of the show. I mean, to the front of the line. You know, Gimlet Media was a podcasting company that had a crazy idea to build a network of shows and play matchmaker with advertisers. Yep. And they just sold for some ludicrous amount of money to Spotify.
What do you need to start a podcast? We talked about why you should start a podcast, but real quick, we'll try to get through it because I know you got places to go and people to see. But what do you need to start a podcast? You don't need all this stuff.
You need a smartphone.
That's all you need.
And a very quiet place.
You can literally just start a podcast on your iPhone.
You really can. The mic on that is great. Go into your closet because it's probably where the most muffled sound is in your house. Maybe you have carpet in your house. I don't know. Go to a very quiet room. The smallest, quietest room in your house, which is probably your closet. Don't go in the bathroom. It's going to be very echoey. And download an app like Anchor that's free that allows you to create a podcast, produce a podcast, edit a podcast, promote a podcast, monetize a podcast, and share a podcast for free. So if you didn't hear all that, rewind 10 seconds and hear all that again, because Anchor's free. It's now owned by Spotify. I'm thoroughly impressed by the platform. It has a desktop version. It has an app, and it allows you to start podcasting today. The number one thing that all of us have working against us and preventing us from starting a podcast or recording another episode is the commitment to be able to say, I'm going to do one episode a month. I'm going to do one episode a week, and actually stick to that and find out what happens. And then just have dogs come jump on you randomly in the middle of a podcast episode.
Ace the pod dog.
So, again, get a couple episodes done through Anchor. And find out where I'm not here to tell you how committed you are. I'm here for you to evaluate where your level of commitment is, and you decide how committed you are to making it a reality. But yeah, you need a smartphone. And then let's say you record a couple episodes and you're like, you know what, I want to up my mic game. I'll buy a Blue Yeti for $100, plug it into your laptop, go on anchor.fm.
Yeah, that's it.
Record an episode. They've got jingles and transitions and edits, and you can put an ad on there and monetize your show. I started a podcast called the Roll Call Podcast. It was a motivational thing as I do a little rant on the way to the gym. And I've done 10 episodes so far, and it's so easy to use. I've made 34 cents monetizing it.
All right.
From the
Well,
ad
you're on your way.
platform. So yeah, we've already monetized the show. So right out of the gates, it's book the cruise.
Yeah.
Book the cruise.
I love it.
But you don't need anything but a willing and able desire to want to have a conversation with either yourself or whatever your truth is. You can do it with other people too. Whatever whatever your ideal situation is for talking about valuable information or creating valuable information, and just doing it.
Yeah, it's like starting a YouTube channel. Sometimes people are like, I need to get a professional camera. No, you can just bust out your iPhone, and it's all about the content more so than the equipment, right?
Yeah, as long as we can hear you, it's not quiet, it's not echoey, it's not, and you're just sharing what your truth is. Less is better. If it's just you talking, keep it to 15 minutes max, if that, maybe 10 minutes. If it's a conversation with somebody else, it could be an hour, it can be, 45 minutes, whatever the case may be. It's for you to go and figure out on here. But yeah, smartphone gets it done. And then if you want to graduate and get, step up your mic game, buying a Blue Yeti, which is a USB mic that it's literally plug and play right into your laptop would be the natural next step. And then, have the doggy come back. Hi, doggy. Hi, doggy.
So now you started a podcast, right? You're up and running. Anchor, wherever you use, been easily to now upload to all the different platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts and the like. How do you go about growing a podcast? How do you go about marketing and getting listeners?
Marketing a podcast is not easy at all because it's an audio file. So you can't just upload your audio file to Facebook and hope people are going to go listen to it.
Yeah.
Your podcast is hosted on an audio platform, right? So you can share the link to your show, but Facebook's not very favorable to links. So you've got to get creative. And there's several tools out there like headliner.app or
Subtitle.
Subtitle is exactly what I was trying to think of, and I couldn't think of it.
Yep.
Capwig, Kapwing, allows you to create audio memes. So an audio meme would be your cover art or the art or a picture of your guest, whatever it may be, and the little squiggly lines, and it plays a 1-minute clip for the show to be able to post on Instagram and stories and Facebook and be able to tease it and say, hey, the comments below, build your email list, send a link out there.
List, that's something I'm not doing at all right now with my podcast.
Yeah.
So you'd recommend me doing email marketing?
100%.
Right?
Yeah. Whatever your existing list is, your podcast, your natural next step of content. So being able to drop an email to your existing list on, hey, we started a podcast. People are either going to unsubscribe or they're going to subscribe to the show. So you find that out in the beginning. So don't be, if you've got a business list that you communicate, events and content and stuff with, feel free to let it rip and say we've launched the new podcast to see, what happens, because people are adapting more and more to podcasting. So the chances of them, wanting to listen to what you have to say are pretty high.
It seems like also the best way to market a podcast, or one of the best ways, is what you're doing right now, going on other people's podcasts to talk about your podcast, right?
And that's exactly the strategy.
Yep.
Never in a million years would I drive to Miami Shores, of course, unless it was to hang out with the illustrious Will. But it's a win-win.
Yeah.
Right? You get quality content. Another guest on your show, one less thing you've got to do to go find another guest on there, and the guest is able to talk about through their story what's transpired through their story and what's actually happened, which just happens to be what my business is. But yeah, phenomenal way to promote your podcast is to be on other podcasts. Well, how do I do that, Sebastian? Just go to LinkedIn and type in podcasting and find out how many people podcast host, and just hit people up and start adding connections on LinkedIn and go, hey, you're a podcast host. Just want to let you know that I help people tell their story with podcasting and with YouTube videos. If you ever need a guest regarding that, let me know. And chances are they're going to say, sure, I'd love to have you on the show. So, and then you just reciprocate that by getting other people on your show to talk about them and brag about them, etc.
Yeah. And you got to put in the work, right? You got to hustle. It's not just like you're going to put a show out there and all of a sudden you're going to get 1 million listeners. You really got to, get out there and promote it. It's
guerrilla marketing. Yeah. It's out there. It's talking to people. It's having conversations. It's saying, have you heard my show? Remember, if you started a radio show in the 1940s, what would you do? Like, you'd just be like, hey, dude, tune in to channel 9, 95.9, right? Or whatever it was. However, radio was, there was no 95.9 then. It was like, turn the knob to 10 in your car would be how you would promote. It's word of mouth.
Yep, absolutely. So you got to get out there. You got to pound the pavement and tell people about your show.
People find it through distribution networks too, but if that's your game plan, that's a horrible strategy.
Video or not? What do you think? Is it good to record the podcast on video if you can?
Well, let's back up. You said, what do people need to start a podcast? Excuse me. They need a smartphone. So if you want to start a podcast, you want to start sharing your truth, open up Facebook, go live on Facebook, in your closet, in a quiet place,
Yep.
wherever it may be. And once you do that, get the archive video of the Facebook Live, pull the audio from it, and ding, 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 you got a podcast.
Yep.
So streamline that. That's how I started doing, because that allows you to be habitual.
That's
and I
great.
do that with the Roll Call podcast. So I'll go live before the gym, after the gym, first thing in the morning, sporadically, and I'll go live on Facebook with a topic from the studio,
awesome.
And rant about something, and then I'll take the audio and I'll take the audio and if you drag a video into GarageBand, you
Right.
can delete the video and save the audio, and boom,
Right.
there's your podcast episode. And I just go to Anchor and upload that, put a transition in, put the little monetizing ad in, and we're off to the races.
How do you cut through the noise? There's so many podcasts. Like you said, relatively speaking, there's not, but there's a lot of podcasts out there. When people open up iTunes, they open up Overcast, they open up Spotify, there's recommended podcasts. How do you get people to find your show? How do you differentiate and cut through the noise when there's only so many, hours in the day that people can listen to any podcast?
Will, I may get some criticism for this comment, but I just don't think that people are going to the iTunes store and searching for.
No,
new
I don't see.
podcasts.
I don't personally either. I mean,
At all.
it's a direct link usually that I hit. You subscribe from there.
Maybe in Spotify because they're throwing it right in front of you, but still not doing it. Like,
Right.
I don't know. I have no remote idea of what kind of podcast I want to listen to. And I've
Right.
got a podcast and I help people start a podcast.
Right.
I've been posed with this question lately and I haven't had an answer. And I feel like I should have an answer, but I just still don't have it.
I think that's a great answer.
No, that's not the question. The question is, what's your favorite podcast? And I don't have. I'm like Dr. Phil. I mean, because that's the most recent one that I've listened to.
Sure.
Right. But I don't think people are going to search for podcasts. I think it is through human interaction and content and marketing and sharing stories. So, cutting through the noise. I think it's a matter of creating your own noise with your own community and your own network, right? Because you're starting a show and your community, while they may listen to other podcasts, they're part of your community and tuning in because they want to hear what your truth is and what value you provide to them.
Yep, for sure.
So as long as you continue to do that and rinse and repeat and build and attract the same like-minded individuals to do that, who cares about noise or saturation? You're building something that's yours.
Yep.
They may be a part of something else, but it's your community and following that you're building. Again, I may be off on that, but I think that's the direction that we're heading with I believe within the next 5 years, every business will have a podcast studio in it.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think, again, it's just
It's the new radio.
Yeah, forget about the word podcast and how it's buzzy. It's a medium that allows for passive consumption when people are driving or on the treadmill.
It's frictionless.
It's frictionless, right? I'd much rather listen to audio than read a blog post, right? So
right, exactly. Who wants to read like some kind of animal, right? Or we'll have to watch a video, like the whole thing? Are you crazy?
And the fact is, we have limited time in our day. We have a lot of stuff going on. Everybody's very busy. To carve out time to read, it is a very small window, the amount of time that you can read throughout the day. But the amount of time that you potentially could passively listen to something is much greater, right?
It
so
really,
you have
really
bigger
is.
windows to really impact people with your content, and that's what I tell people when they're
and as technology continues to well, number one, it continues. I always say technology will make us all conform. We'll continue to do that. Conform with how we're consuming content.
Yes.
Right now, you may not know what a podcast is.
Yep.
But you soon will. It's
Awesome.
the new radio. It is replacing radio. The radio world is scurrying right now to figure out the whole podcast game.
Agreed. So how can people find you?
You can find me on the interwebs of the social medias.
Yep.
LinkedIn's a great place to find me. Sebastian Rusk, Rusk, or on Instagram at Seb Rusk. Slide into the DMs. You got questions about podcasting. The Podcast Launch Lab is on Instagram, just like it sounds. And questions, thoughts, ideas, concerns, feedback on this show, whatever you want, hit me up. I want to chat and have a conversation with you.
Awesome, man. Love it. Sebastian, I love your energy, dude. It's like every time I'm sitting with you, it's like drinking a cup of coffee, dude. Like I'm invigorated.
Cafecito,
yeah, man. I want to do some bigger things with my show. So thank you for all the inspiration and the ideas.
Good.
If you want to hit up Sebastian, we'll leave his content and his contact information in the description of the show.
Yep.
And feel free to reach out. He's a good guy and he always loves hearing from you. And man, thank you for joining.
Hey, dude, we got to get you over to the studio.
Yeah, let's do it.
Get you on the show.
Let's make it happen.
So you interviewed me. Now I'm going to interview you. And that's just the world of podcasting.
I love it.
dude.
Reciprocate.
Yes, sir.
Cool.
Great to see you, Will.
Likewise, brother.